Welcome to the Shelter FootyCast live from BackChat Studios. It's Thursday. It's round 4, I think, Skeeter. Great to be with you. That is right. You can follow us on social, Shelter FootyCast, or you can send us an email, footycast@backchatstudios.com.au. My co-host, Mark Reddings, is with me. Hello, Skeet. How are you? What are you laughing at?
I'm just thinking because one name has been prominent this week, and it sort of reminds me of a show when I was growing up before your time. It's called The Odd Couple, and it was Oscar and Felix. And Oscar's been in the news this week, and we're a bit like Oscar and Felix. You go and have a look at The Odd Couple, and it's a show where the two blokes living together. One bloke dresses really well and is a bit more conservative. The other bloke just a bit of a slob and just. So which one are you? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but it just reminded me of us at times. With I'm a bit down dressed today, but generally I try and create a bit of a
Don't
a standard.
backpedal. Don't backpedal.
We're Oscar and Felix. So just have a look. Just have a look at The Odd Couple. It is, and you're too young to remember, and probably half our audience as well. But anyone over the age of 50,
you watched this all through your childhood and teens, obviously back in the 70s.
No, I was a kid. It was in the 70s. I was just as a young
60s.
kid. No, not 60s. I'm
50s.
not. No, I was born in the 70s. So, but anyway, so we are The Odd Couple, and Oscar's been in the news, and we'll talk about him.
We might be spending too much time together. I think I can guarantee you that. Wednesday night on 6PR. Dano, our producer, brought out a stat from the Ashes. On this day, Tony Gregg took 8 for something. It was like 1972.
75.
And I said, where were you sitting at the game, Skeeter? And you were filthy. And you still are.
Well, because I've got I was born. That's one thing. I'm sorry about that. I was born in the 70s, but I can't help that, unfortunately. And I do, because I've got knowledge going back past when I was born as well. It's just,
I thought you might have been sort of 20, 25 years old, sitting in the stands clapping Tony Gregg along.
Yeah, sorry, George Clooney.
Very good. Welcome to the Shelter FootyCast, where WA's best footy show and WA's best beer combine to bring you all the latest footy news. Skeeter, we have a brand new sponsor on the show. You're going to be excited about this one, Aspect Accountants, right here in Perth. They've been looking after us, BackChat, for a number of years. So they are our personal accountants here at BackChat. They're brilliant. Ben and the team in there. So if you're a small business owner or even looking at taking your side hustle to the next level, you've got to get in touch with Aspect Accountants this end of financial year for a free and initial consultations on all things accounting and tax. Now, Skeet,
side hustle, and that sums you up. Side hustle, Schofield.
I know where your mind's gone, though. I wonder if they can handle some of my cash transactions that I've been taking on board.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Am I breaking up? Can you hear me? Is this microphone on?
Everything's invoiced. I don't care what. You do what you want in your life, but I'm the tax department. We love your work.
Okay. Very good. Aspect Accountants will be looking after the numbers side of Thursday's show, Skeeter. So when you start pulling numbers off our good man Louis at the Champion
People
Data.
think we just come up with these just like having done intense research. Well, generally it's Champion Data and Louis, but of course that's now going to be prefaced by our brand new sponsor.
So if you're looking for an accountant before tax time, you're a small business owner, or you want to level up a little bit, Aspect Accountants are the way to go. Now, Skeeter, I do want to get into some big moments. I was a bit angry on Monday. What?
You're right. You're fired up about a lot of things.
Yeah, I was fired up. I'll start with the Tribunal. Richmond has failed to overturn Ryan Mansell's 3-week suspension at the Tribunal. Everyone knows this. It's Thursday. This happened Tuesday. People are across the incident. People are across probably how I feel about the incident. What I guess is different to talk about, Skeet, is over the last 3 weeks, but certainly over the last few years, and this might surprise you, I do study the Tribunal decision. I don't just read one little post saying Ryan Mansell has not got off and then move on. I actually have a look at the Tribunal and what they had to say and why they made the decision. Because, Skeet, at some point in time, I did about 12 units of a law degree, and I don't mind the stuff, right? If you look at the Tribunal's reasoning for this, and if you watch the Tribunal or at least get some of the coverage of how this plays out, I think I may have discovered how we get some more consistency in this. The worst thing about the Tribunal at the moment is once you get to challenging stage, so MRO, which is Michael Christian, thank you. You knew I didn't know what I was talking about there. Michael Christian, he makes the ruling. He's just looking at a table effectively.
And
Impact,
that's his job, and you have to.
You can't really get upset with him.
No,
because he just goes, all right, was it high? Yes. Was it high impact? Yes. Was it deliberate? Was it intentional? Careless? He just goes bang, bang, bang. There's a decision. That's his job done. The tribunal, though, and I've sat in these before, Skate. It is it's like a court of law.
As a defendant?
Both ways. I've done it at waffle level, I've done it at AFL level, and both ways, absolutely. It's intimidating for starters, especially for young players, because you're not there with a couple of representatives from the AFL. You're there with full-blown lawyers, and the tribunal chair is usually a judge-like figure. It's not scary, but it's intimidating. And if you watch these along, the language used is so far removed from an AFL game, it is ridiculous. And you start talking about reasonable players, and duty of care is not too I guess ambiguous in what that means, but the terminology used doesn't match up with our game. Like describing a player as a reasonable player or decision-making abilities, it's taking AFL, which is a bang bang sport,
360 degrees. Yeah, it's a unique sport in the physical contact.
It's taking that and then putting it in a courtroom effectively, and what it does is it doesn't take into account what's actually happened. It's using this legal jargon, and then punters like me, fans, media, clubs, the player. If you watch Ryan Mantle's reaction to this, he's just sitting there in disbelief and shaking his head, can't believe what's going on. And the reason is it's taken our game of footy and it's putting it in a courtroom. And I think that's the biggest issue. I think we've gone further and further away from having former players, former coaches, people that are in the game, to a couple of lawyers going at it. And it's ridiculous. The players got a lawyer, the AFL have got lawyers, and they're just going at each other in legal terms. It's crap. It doesn't actually reflect the incident.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned former players and guys like Wayne Henwood, Richard Loveridge. There's obviously a batch of players that were introduced to try and give it that player touch. And look, I think that's important, and be it that generation, whether it's Moose and those guys going back, or your generation where Jimmy Bartell was quite vocal about it, Jacko on radio the other night. There needs to be that taken into account. I'm not sure how that translates into having a better representation, because as legal experts or as fans or the media, we can have opinions on what we see.
Yes.
On the TV or live at the game. I know it's like saying, if you haven't,
it's
won a Melbourne Cup as a jockey, but if you haven't played out there, you don't specifically know how players are taught to react, how you react instinctively, and how quick the game is. So I think there needs to be a fair bit of weight put on the views of players either recently retired, still playing, of Patrick Dangerfield, whoever it is, to maybe have a greater say in what happens on the field.
Let me just read, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about the language, and just if you're just a punter, so what are we even talking about? So, we do not accept Mansell's evidence, as we do not see that two players were running into attempt to mark the ball. Vision is not consistent with this evidence. If, as Mansell said, he did not know the other players were running forward to contest the mark, it's highly unlikely that he would have pushed O'Connell away from himself and into the path of what would be, on his evidence, an uncontested mark. Mansell's movement are only consistent with him knowing or assuming that other players were running into contest the mark. How would you know? How would you know what his movements are consistent with? How would
they're honestly trying to read his mind?
Yeah, correct. How can you say that statement? It's just absolutely ridiculous, especially when he's given evidence to the contrary. And so they're saying, well, we don't believe it. No worries. Which that's a court of law. Even if Mansell did not see sufficiently and clearly that other players were running to contest the mark, he would or should have assumed that the ball hung in the air for long enough for the reasonable player to expect that players who had set up about 30-metre mark would run in and try and contest the ball. Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me? That is written in some sort of law document of what is AFL football, and then they've written that down. It's like running to contest the mark, he would or should have assumed that the ball hung in the air for long enough for the reasonable player to expect the play. Mate, I'm telling you, as much as I'd love to say footy players are smart enough, they play on reaction. And you ain't getting a bloody a wheel to measure up 30 metres. You're just playing on reaction, mate. And the decisions that are being made are so far removed from what our game is that is why the frustration is there.
What gets you more fired up, the Jackson Archer incident or the Ryan Mansell suspension?
Probably Ryan Mansell. Yeah, I can at least see, look, it was pretty reckless by Jackson Archer. And I can defend that by saying, well, he's just trying to, that's what he brings as a player. He's trying to be hard and contest and all of that. That was more reckless than this one. This one, mate, I actually can't believe it's 3 weeks.
So I wasn't in the tribunal, but again, and we've discussed this before. If O'Connell, that was the kid's name so he gets up and plays on, is this a 3-week suspension?
It's a 0-week suspension,
100%.
And if he's 0.1 of a second sort of earlier, he would get pushed past the contest, pushed past Tom Lynch's arm. He would go back with the flight, and everyone would go, "Oh, gee, that was close," and it'd be a free kick to Tom Lynch, which it was, right? Mm-hmm. So, mate, I can't believe that this is where we're at, and I'm going to continue banging on about it if that's okay with you.
You go for it.
You brought to me last night, Skeet, and I'm keen to know a little bit more about it because I missed it. AFL fixture revamp. There's been a few suggestions from a couple of well-known and well-respected figures in the AFL. Eddie Maguire, Tom Harley has now put forward a submission, the CEO of Sydney, around a pre-finals bye.
Well, in essence,
these are different. They're both different.
I think they are, but just the Tom one, and look, every time there's only been a couple of premiers win following the pre-finals bye who've been outside the top 4. Bulldogs,
yep.
Brisbane,
yep.
The teams that they beat on grand final day, Sydney. So you can see why Tommy's going down that path. And look, I do agree with him, to be totally honest with you. I think it does take away an advantage of the top 4 that they've had because, look, you're giving those sides outside that top bracket a week to freshen up. I just think it certainly doesn't benefit the teams finishing on the top of the table. That's going to be put forward at Gather Round, I believe. Tom Harley's going to come forward and say that. Look, I'm an advocate for having a break before the grand final.
They're not going to get that up this year, though.
No.
You can't bring it in mid-season.
Well,
I wouldn't put it past you.
No, I agree. It's not going to happen this year, but I think there's enough groundswell to have the discussion anyway. As for Eddie, and look, Eddie's mail doesn't come out of thin air. He's got extremely good contacts.
You know this. Like, whenever he speaks, he's spoken to probably 10 people. Right, and he's based this on he doesn't just go to bed at night and go, I'm going to come up.
And he might have even said to whether it's Richard Goyder or Andrew Dillon, I'm going to run with this. And they said, just get a temperature in the community as to whether this will float. And he's done it on Footy Classified. In essence, the bottom line is pushing the grand final date back to mid-October, starting the season with a state of origin style carnival, if you want, over a couple of weekends, and giving the back end of the year, I suppose. Clean air, I suppose, when it comes to that mid-October, maybe better weather, and I know it impinges into cricket, etc. But also, in Eddie's words, and God, heaven forbid, the Australian Formula 1 Grand Prix in Melbourne in March, that clashes with round 1. We don't care outside of Melbourne, but that they do care in Victoria, and that's where the centricity of the game is. So there's the Grand Prix factor. There's also other elements involved. They've got an NFL game being played in Melbourne, I think it's 26. So in the next 12 to 18 months. So to try and alleviate that, they've got a test cricket match between Australia and England happening, which will take place, I think, in March in 27, which is 150 years. So that's all in the mix as well. But also, the bottom line is state of origin. That's where they're looking at putting it, by all accounts, the start of the season, then pushing the grand final and prelim final, of course, back towards mid-October, which, end of the day, it's neither here nor there to me. But it also means that as part of that October grand final, daylight saving will have been introduced into the eastern states, notably Victoria, where the grand final will be played. So it also pushes the idea that a twilight grand final, a night grand final is an Eddie. And I must admit, I have no issues with an AFL night grand final. More so twilight, I think that works better, but I think that is where we have to be at some stage looking at that. The fans have voted no continuously. They want the 2:30 or whatever it is, Melbourne time, start for the grand final. But people say, rubbish grand final at night. I'll give you one case that worked well. Brisbane up in the Gabba during COVID. That was,
ours was good.
I was about to say that was the starting point. If you could give me one reason why, having seen the Perth Grand Final, why it couldn't be replicated, and it was a beautiful night, and it was just a great day for footy in WA. Why that can't be replicated on a national scale in Victoria, for instance, I have no idea.
I still remember 2015 how bloody hot it was.
It was.
It was like a furnace out there, and we played like we were playing in a furnace. I would have appreciated a 4:30 start, 5 p.m. start. It might have cooled down a little bit.
I'll tell you what, that day I was at the Hilton across the road, at the Pullman now.
Couple of
Absolutely, a couple of shelters,
early?
yeah, just nerve settlers. And,
were you calling or were you just there?
No, just there as part of a junket. And I was with some people, and they just got married. And I said, congratulations, really happy for. I got married October as well. They said, when? They said, October 3. I said, today's October 3, because remember it was October the 3rd. It was in October. I said, shh. So I rang my wife and said, a happy anniversary, baby. That's a true story.
How was that reaction in Victoria?
It wasn't great.
I mean, you could have put it back on her and said, I haven't had a phone call from you, love.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Especially when you're on the beers in Melbourne.
You can spin whatever you want. You're going to be in the beers next week in Adelaide, and you'll ring occasionally. You ring before you're half gassed. You'll make sure the kids get a little, hi, it's Dad here. Really? You're just trying to find a spot in the day when you're not socialising.
Very good. I don't know where I fit on the fixture stuff. All I'll say is this year felt like it came around quickly. I don't know if it was because we're all busy this season. Like felt like it started.
Well, last year.
This year felt like it started early. Like
I did. I saw it early March.
You know what I mean? Like it almost felt too early. So I don't know about State of Origin and the late grand final and all of that. I probably don't have a strong enough opinion on any of that, but I wouldn't be disappointed to have a couple more weeks post sort of summer junkets to get into footy, basically, because it was like a month and then we're into it.
Yeah, I don't mind the early March, given the NRL starts around then. Cricket's basically done and dusted. I don't mind starting it a bit earlier, but if you're doing that, particularly in the northern and Western Australia, maybe AFL play matches at appropriate times, because we do have a hotter climate than the East Coast, and then have the breaks during the year. If you need to have a couple of breaks during the year, and players are always asking for that, and you want the best spectacle, then do that. I don't think anyone in mid-July is going to say, there's no footy on for one weekend. I think we're more than happy to have an early start and be flexible about how we negotiate the rest of the year.
All right, very good, Skeeter. Something we haven't spoken about that lots of people are speaking about is Oscar Allen and the West Coast Eagles and Sam Mitchell on a raiding expedition over here in the West. Hawthorn is certainly linked to everybody. Zach Butters, Harley Reid, Oscar Allen. Mark Reddings is probably headed over there for some sort
media
of announcement media role. Look, there's been a lot of chat. We're Thursday morning here. I just was thinking on the way here, a bit of a different way to speak about it. Look, to summarise, I think the biggest issue here is that people found out. I don't think the bigger issue is that Oscar Allen's looking around, because he doesn't have a contract. And whether you're captain or not and you're in a contract year, you need to explore the market. Now, you can do that privately and not have it get out, which I'm sure everyone in a contract year is doing via their managers. The biggest issue is people found out about it. Would you agree or disagree with that? Because we've been taking calls on 6PR and people on socials saying, Oscar should lose the captaincy because he's looking around. I don't agree with that statement. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm staggered that if they were sitting in a cafe, that we don't know that. I don't know that. But
no, I haven't done it.
I'm not prone to trying to dig that up. But you would have thought it could have been done more discreetly if that's the case. It happens everywhere, as you said, and it does happen where there's catch-ups between, as we know, Sam Mitchell and Tom Barrass last year. It happens. Adam Simpson has mentioned numerous times, and you've told me that happens, a dozen or so times during the year where coach, player, and generally, if the coach and the player from the rival clubs get together, generally I think it's probably more 50% chance that player is open to leaving.
Yeah.
That's a read of most situations, because
if it gets to that point,
yeah,
right?
If it's coach and play, if it's manager, which is more the norm.
Yes.
But once a player meets with a coach, I think, not saying they've got one foot out the door, in Tom Barrass's case, maybe it was the case, but it just feels to me like once you physically sit down with a coach and for instance, in Oscar's case, get a read of, hey, What are you looking for in your career? What sort of longevity? I'm not sure they talk about specifics of contracts per se, but what they want out of the last 5 years of your career, what can you bring to our club? What can we give to you that might be beneficial to both parties? And if they did chat, I would be staggered if Tom Barras, if Mitchell hadn't had a chat to Tom and said, okay, what do you think about Oscar as a bloke, as a leader, as a player? I'm sure he's given a tick on all three fronts.
Well, that's the one thing that I thought about as well. Oscar Allen, I would have, if I was in charge of any other football club other than West Coast, if I was a coach or in admin or list management, he would be, given my experience with him personally as a teammate and as a person, I would have him at the very top of the list of someone I'd want at my football club. That's why I've been going aggressively at West Coast over the last month. I've been doing this before Sam Mitchell made a play, correct?
But do they not have? I'm talking about the West Coast Eagles.
I'm sure they do.
And his body has not been great. You're saying ahead of, say, Sam Darcy, for instance,
mate. Look,
and you don't know Sam.
Mate, I don't know Sam, so I'm just saying people I know and players
character.
I have.
You're talking characters.
Character, leadership, all those things. Oscar Allen's right at the top. And Sam Mitchell knows that because he has coached him. So people are saying, why is Sam Mitchell rating the Eagles? Well, because he knows these people.
Good on him.
So Tom Barras, right up the top. And that's why I've aggressively gone West Coast going, what are you doing? Because those two players, I think within that club, are the two best leaders, Oscar Allen and Tom Barras. And Sam Mitchell knows that. This isn't I'm just going to see what free agent I'm going to just throw a couple
big
of
forward
darts.
who's out there.
Mate, he knows who these people are. And whether you disagree with Oscar looking around and people have questioned his integrity and his captaincy and his leadership, if you want to do that, that's fine. I'm telling you he's a good leader, both on and off field. And Sam Mitchell knows that. That is why he has been so bullish and bold and doesn't really... I don't think Sam Mitchell cares that much if people know. I'm sure he's not the one leaking this, but this has been leaked, Ski. I don't reckon this is a public catch-up down at the Cop Beach.
If you're a Hawthorn supporter... You're saying, brilliant. Good on you, Sam. And you know what? The Eagles might be doing the same thing. The Dockers might be doing the same thing to other players.
Do you reckon they are? West Coast specifically?
I would hope they'd be not necessarily looking for the Oscar Allen type or whatever it is. But
why not?
Well, are they looking? My question to you is it harder to get a Victorian-based player, if they're not West Australian, to come home, or to get, say, a West Australian like Tom, who wanted to stay here, or an Oscar Allen, to go and play in the so-called heartland of the AFL in Melbourne? I think it's a harder sell to get a Victorian to come here and relocate for whatever reason in the middle stage of their career or at the peak of their powers, as opposed to the other way. You can probably correct me.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. It was easier when West Coast were winning or Freo.
Well, you know what? That is the one thing that I think is, we sort of talk all around the elements of the Oscar Allen possibilities. If the West Coast Eagles were not having won 10 of their last 65 games, wherever it is, if they were a successful club on field at the moment...
or a path quickly to one.
Yeah, but you could see that there's, they're going to win 10, 12 games this year, whatever it is. I think the decision's a lot easier for Oscar.
Yep.
Because, you've banged on about this for a long time, that players, obviously financially is important, but they want to win a premiership. Yes. They want to win matches. Yes. And you know what it's like being, I think, during the wooden spoon era, going back 15 years ago, when it's pretty grim.
It's grim, but what we had there was a pretty quick way back to success.
You could see that.
As a young player, we had a really strong young core. Like I've spoken about this before, Shuey, Selwood, Nananui, Prudis, Hearn, Waters, Butler, all these guys. And I've missed a couple there as well. Mackenzie, just Prudis. But we had senior players as well, and it was a really strong group that was pretty injured at the time. And we had, the coach, John Worsfold, there was a lot of belief in him. And I'm not saying Andrew McQualter, there's nothing. He's been there for 3 months, 4 months. There was a real, at that time, we're going to get back up the top. And we did. We played in a prelim the next year. I don't think there's the same belief at West Coast internally.
There's not the same quality of players. That's the other issue. They haven't, the list management, I don't care what anyone says, the list management, whether there's bad luck involved in that or bad judgment, bad selections, they don't have that same quality of young players coming through. And you can go through a long list, and I know even Ruben Jimby, who was a top 10 pick, I think he'll be a solid player and a good player. I still think the list hasn't been able to regenerate anywhere near as quickly as the group you're talking about and the selections they made and the way they went about it.
I wonder if Andrew McQualter knew this is what he signed up for.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Has to have.
Okay, I wonder. But great. That's good. That's good. You answered it. That's good. Just a real deviation. We can get into the games. Tom Edwards, who we've spoken about on this show, great opportunity. Drafted from the Swan Districts. Big game player, big moment player. He's unfortunately done his ACL at training, which is like that makes me feel sick for a young player like that who's finally got his opportunity, senior pickup. Played some games, kicked some goals at AFL level, and then at training you do your ACL.
Yeah, his first game against, I think, the Crows, kicked 3 from memory. He's just left a teaching job in Les Murdy. He gets the break of his career, a bit like Jaden Hunter, who went from Perth to Essendon a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Had a really good, picked up in the mid-season draft, mind you, and then he does his back, then he does an ACL as well. It's and just looking through the injury list yesterday, 5 ACLs on Richmond's list, and so 5 ACLs. That's extraordinary to me. So it's just bad luck for Tom, and I just wonder whether they'll keep him in Melbourne to do rehab or whether he can come home and do some teaching. I don't know. That's something, but our thoughts go out to him.
All right, there we go. Will Schofield, Mark Redding's Shelter Brewing Co., the beer that Skeeter can't get enough of. Let's get into the previews for West Coast and Fremantle off the top skate. They're not playing each other this weekend, so who knows where the 4 points are going to go. We'll start with West Coast. West Coast v GWS at NG Stadium in a blockbuster 11:10 a.m. Sunday is our time. We'll be watching that one. Skate, a couple of changes in this one. Jeremy McGovern will be out. He'll be out for about a month, I reckon, with that groin. Not as bad as it could have been, but certainly not as good as it could have been. Jake Waterman is a test. That certainly hung around longer than we maybe thought it was going to. Skate?
Not really.
Okay.
No, I said last week he wouldn't play,
Good point.
and I would say I'm going to say less than 50% chance he plays. If you're going to have the calf, and there's something there,
Yep.
got to get him 100% right. And to be totally honest, they can't win this match, I don't think.
I think there'll be 3 debutants. I'm going really early on this skate. I reckon they'll play Bo Allen.
Yeah, it's taken a while from that illness to get himself.
Because he was going to play round 1.
Yeah, of course.
I reckon they'll play Tom Gross, who's been best on ground in the waffle. And I reckon they'll play Sandy Brock.
As a key defender to take Gov's place?
My mail says that his waffle form has been very good. I've played with Sandy at Peel Thunder in my battling year out of the AFL, and I was extremely impressed with him. I think he's got elite athletic ability. He probably just needs to work on that, elite defensive ability. But if you play him up the ground a bit, I reckon he can really impact games of footy. So I expect there to be at least 2 of those guys playing this weekend for West Coast. But it's certainly a baptism of fire heading over to GWS in Western Sydney to make your debut. But hopefully those boys get a chance. From a playing point of view, Oscar Allen play forward or back?
Oh, he's forward. That's what I think he's a forward. I think you have to give yourself half a chance to kick a score, and with no Waterman there, if that's the case, I just think you have to have some representation in height up forward. He has the class. Look, he was poor last week with his, obviously had a quality opponent, but there were 37 entries or something. So there's a lot of factors involved there, but he's the watch this weekend to see how he performs and where he plays. I think he plays forward. I think he has to, unless the glass is there and you've got to break it with the emergency of Hogan and co going mad.
Skeeter, thanks to Aspect Accountants. That's right. If you do want to get in touch with them, Skeet, you can at info@aspecta.com.au. They've got offices here in West Perth, got an office down in Busselton. So if you're listening from the southwest, go and see the team in there. So there's some numbers from them. Skate West Coast has lost the inside 50 count in 11 of its last 12 matches, winning the count in round 15 last year, albeit by just 2 entries. So if West Coast is any chance, you can't get done by 30 at inside 50, Skater.
No, you don't win any games, do you?
Yes,
under those circumstances.
You got something for me, thanks to Aspect?
Yeah, no, just looking there. They considered 21 marks inside their D50 in round 3, the equal most by any team this season. So 21 marks, and the Dockers didn't really put them to the sword.
They've got a good forward line.
They've got a good forward line.
No, GWS, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
In relation to that stat, Hogan, Cadman, the package who didn't really fire last week. Himmelberg, depending which end of the ground he plays at.
Yeah, and you're looking at, as we know, Edwards, who was subbed out last week, and you're saying Brock and
How was Harry Edwards swap?
I've
already been on that.
No, I've asked the question on the day. I thought it seemed peculiar to me, given the tools that Freo had. So look, they said it's tactical. Touch wood, that was it.
It was tactical. I've confirmed that. It was a tactical sub. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
How are you subbing your fullback that you need to be your fullback for the next 5-7 years of the football club?
And the match at that stage, I think, was slipping. Gone.
Yeah, but that's fine.
No, I'm saying so. Why not keep him out there as a
sub Oscar Allen?
Yeah, well,
you could have. He was playing like dog shit.
Yeah. I mean, we said the same thing about Aaron Norton last Friday night, but Oscar's just got too much quality to leave out for the last half of a match, for instance.
All right, Skate, we're picking GWS. I'm moving on.
Yes.
Okay. Fremantle v Western Bulldogs at Optus Stadium. This is going to be a good game. I'm interested in this one.
Second best match of the round.
Behind?
Well, we're going to the Gold Coast.
Yeah, that's a good point. Carlton, Collingwood tonight will be a good game.
No,
just from interest.
Interest factor, but in terms of the two form teams, it's up on the Goldie. This one, really important for Freo to back up what they did and who they select, because we have spoken about their possible waffle midfield combination this weekend in round one of the waffle and the quality there. But does Hayden Young come straight back in? Has he missed too much footy? We know Darcy unlikely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the selection table tonight.
Sean Darcy, Hayden Young, and Nat Fyfe has already been playing in the waffle. I think they all play in the waffle this weekend. Hayden Young, it's not like this is Hayden Young's first soft tissue injury or tendon injury or whatever. He's been an injured player. Same as Sean Darcy. So you're bringing them back through the waffle to give them 60 minutes because you can't play him a full game, especially Sean Darcy. He's trained for 9 days or something. So I don't even know if he'll definitely play in the waffle. But Freo Western Bulldogs, it'll be Fremantle versus the Lobster. If you haven't seen, Rory Lobb has a lobster on his head, a genuine red lobster printed into his skull.
We did speak to him on 6PR after the win against Carlton. He said... unfortunately, hasn't been able to get the blue rinse out of his hair.
He told us he was going to do something about it, though.
He got asked by his teammates to go put purple in his hair for this week, which would have been put like that in Pamplona with the bulls and the matador. Good luck with that lob. So no, he just decided to put the lobster on his head. So he clearly has no issue attracting attention.
No. I just on Rory Lobb, and I know Freo fans listening along will hate this, but it's been one of the great rejuvenation stories, right?
Yeah.
He's been a third tall, second ruck for his whole career, and the Bulldogs, because of necessity, because they were worried about being too tall with Jamal Uhagan, Norton, Bruce was running around there as well.
No, Darcy.
Yeah, Darcy. Yeah, sorry, Darcy's the man. They put him back, and he's very good. He's a good backman. He's an intercepting, can spoil, can play one-on-one.
Can I say this with all due respect to your beloved craft of being a defender? This is what others...
Don't do it.
Okay.
Go on, do it.
Is it easier for a Lob to impose himself and have an impact and be successful as a defender?
So what are you saying? Don't pose it as a question. Just make a statement.
Well, the statement is...
Go on.
Aren't all successful defenders just failed forward?
That's another question. Make a statement.
Well, that's the key. He was a failed forward, is now a successful defender.
Thank you very much. Very good, Skeeter. I like it. Yeah, you're probably right. Keys to the game for this is the same as Freo every week, I think. Andrew Brayshaw in his 150th game, which is exciting for him.
Yep.
Assume that's life membership at Freo. It is at West Coast, so I assume it's the same. Caleb Sarong, Andrew Brayshaw, they're two vice-captains in the midfield, need to play well for Freo to win. And is that a good thing? Probably. I mean, they're two better players, so you need your best players to play well to win.
Are they A graders?
Both of them?
And Brayshaw?
Yep.
Okay.
Are they A graders?
No, I had this argument or discussion with Julian Jakovic, and I don't think he's thinking, because of maybe their lack of goal kicking ability as midfielders. When you say
Andrew Brayshaw won the AFLPA MVP,
yeah, no,
that's an A grader.
Yeah, in terms of Nick Dacos, Marcus Bontempelli, the top echelon of midfielders, where do those blokes sit, do you reckon?
There's 5 to 10 of those types.
Yep.
Cripps is one, Bontempelli's one, right? Those sorts of guys. and then just like Dawson's probably moving into it this year.
True.
Zach Merritt's one. Sorry, I just thought while I was doing it, I'd
Rao.
list a few. Rao's one. Nick Dacos is one.
Are they in that category?
They're just under that tier.
Yeah, no, it was a...
I'd have all those guys as like Brownlow favourites, and then just the tier under, which makes you an A grader. I think those guys are premium platinum above an A grader, and then you've got A graders.
I'll buy that.
Yeah. I think they need to play well to win, and the other key to this game is who plays on Sam Darcy. You'd have to think it's Alex Pearce. He's their best defender. I said it 2 weeks ago. I said it again watching the game. You need to play Sam Darcy with touch on the front shoulder. You cannot play him back shoulder. He's actually too quick as a tall guy. He gets too much separation. One, by his kind of forward craft, but then two, by his length. That if you start back shoulder, you can't match his length. Like even if your chest is on his back, your arm can't reach his hands. He's got such long arms. Harry Mackay's actually like that as a player. You need to play him front shoulder, but with touch. You can't play him like Jeremy McGovern may at times give him 5 metres, because then he just does out the back, reaches over you, makes you look silly. It's tight, physical, and Jacob Wiedering did it last Friday. You and I called that game together. Alex Pearce has that in his kit bag. So I expect Alex Pearce to keep Sam Darcy very quiet in this one, Skeeter, which means our man Aaron Norton, who we were pretty critical of last week, needs to have a big game.
He does. And you talk about the mids of the Dockers in brief. I think you would be negligent if you didn't at least try and find a way to nullify, which is going to be difficult, Libba in the middle. He's just having an enormous year.
Yes, that is a very good call. Thanks to Aspect Accountants. Some numbers, Skeeter. The Dockers averaged just 65 uncontested marks this season, ranked 17th. They averaged 85 uncontested marks last season. So they've gone from a top 6 side to a bottom 6 side in that metric. And across the ground, uncontested possessions, totally the same sort of things happen. So they are playing a different game style, Freo, this year. But we've played 3 rounds. After 6, we'll really know whether it's, they played West Coast, so they just moved it at will. Or after 6 rounds against good sides, is that a pattern? But interestingly, I think they are moving the ball differently. And the Bulldogs on that side of things, Skate, the Bulldogs have won 6 of their last 9 games against Freo by an average winning margin of 42 points.
That makes this game very critical for Fremantle. They've got Richmond the following week, Melbourne at the MCG. So if they can win this game, their form, I don't think, warrants them being heavy favourites in this game. I think the Bulldogs were, let's be honest, they were poor against Carlton in the first half. They wouldn't want to replicate that at Optus. But if we're selecting a winner in this game, I'm leaning towards Fremantle. Is there a bit of sentiment in that, just simply because we want a WA team to be going well? Probably. If the Bont was playing, you're just as likely to pick the Bulldogs. But I'm going to go with Fremantle, but with no confidence. That Derby win was solid, but I wasn't overly sold on aspects of their game.
If Bont or it was in Melbourne, I'd pick Western Bulldogs. But here, Optus Stadium, off the back of a good win, I'm taking Freo 2. Skeeter, good picking. We're aligned with those two. Collingwood v Carlton tonight, Thursday night. Brilliant, at least from a
promotion point of view.
Yeah, and just you just love the fans going head to head in this one. It'd be brilliant to be at the MCG for this Collingwood Carlton. Big rivalry, probably the biggest rivalry in footy. I know that the games fade in and out of, some people, West Coast Sydney, when it was all those tight games, like that makes a good rivalry. But these two teams genuinely hate each other, which makes it a good rivalry. I'd love to see a bit of physicality in this one. I'd like to see a little bit of Biff, bit of Barney, which we won't see, Skater, because all the players are too nice. Now, Harry Mackay is looking like he will be missing another week. Rightly or wrongly, we're not getting a lot of information on that situation, but Michael Voss has come out and said he'll play when he's ready, and he'll be ready when he gets played. So read into that whatever you would like. The Blues are 0-3. They need to win this game, Skate.
And they need to play better in the second halves. They've scored just, I think, 22 points average in their last halves have been poor. I know Michael Voss suggested they're running out games, but they are clearly not being able to put the 4 quarters together. As you mentioned, Harry Mackay misses again. I thought Charlie Curnow was better last week. From a Collingwood perspective, with Reece McInnes out for this
ACL.
season.
Yep,
Another ACL. Billy Frampton, I think, will come back and play some sort of role there.
Yep, Brody Myercheck is back in as
Yeah,
well.
so
Mason Cox has been
they had a
omitted.
bye, Collingwood. That's interesting to see how they come back from that. Huge crowd. I mean, Carlton's season almost depends on it because of the numbers start to stack up against you. Their midfield, will get enough of the footy, but they lack outside run. They do lack run for mine, and that's maybe playing Collingwood's not such a bad thing, because Collingwood I don't think's an overly quick side.
Yep. No, but Carlton aren't either.
No, that's what I'm saying. So they're not up against a team that's going to run them off their legs. I'm hoping it's a good game. I naturally pick Collingwood because of what they've done in the last couple of weeks, but I expect Carlton to be throwing a couple of punches in this one at least.
I could easily pick Carlton on a rebound match. I think this is a little ambush on the way. I think they've been pretty coy, not much coming out of Carlton. When you start seeing that publicly, it means internally they're building themselves up for a big game. They will come out firing. They have led at halftime in every one of their matches. Tell us about Will White, Skeeter.
Yeah, no, really good prospect. That's all I know.
What team does he play for?
He's playing for Carlton.
Well done,
Goose, and he comes through the VFL.
I don't know.
I'm not
This is
calling
no
it.
offense to Will White, as if we don't. We don't.
I'm lucky I don't know enough about Will Schofield, let alone Will White.
I like the name.
He could be easier William.
Will White. He's making his debut for Carlton, so well done to the young fella. I pretty much agree with everything you say, other than I think this could be closer than people think. Carlton are going to be steaming, mate. Like, they are 0-3, but with a side that's like that, if Collingwood start well, you can shut it up very quickly, because the doubts come back in way quicker when you've started poorly, because you go, here we go again.
Don't see Collingwood. They're not a team for mine that, we know they did against Port Adelaide, but in these sort of matches, I'd never see big margins historically. I think they're pretty close, but Collingwood's always found a way. Well, generally finds a way against Carlton. In the last quarter, last year was Nick Dacos, I think, in the last cut. They've got a bit of a mental hold on Carlton, but you're right. I think tonight's an important night for the footy club with Michael Voss.
Both pick Collingwood.
We have.
Geelong v Melbourne at KP, Cardinia Park, Friday night. Friday night footy in Geelong. Thanks for coming. They'll be up and down Packington Street there. And
what's it called?
Packington Street's sort of main drag down there, or they'll be down at the foreshore, down at the Eureka Hotel or bloody Lammy's or somewhere like that, getting stuck right in on a Friday night. They'll love that. Geelong will get right around this one. Tom Stewart with his knee is a test. Shannon Neal, the big fella, is a test with his ankle. Sean Manor should be in, the Werribee prospect who came on in leaps and bounds the back half of last year. Jake Lever is a test for this one, as well as Cozzy Pickett and Caleb Windsor back in. So they're two big ins for Melbourne. I really like Caleb Windsor as a player, and Cozzy Pickett's very important.
Yeah, they've got some good young players, Melbourne, to be honest with you, like McVee, Rivers. You mentioned Windsor. They have got some young players coming through, but their midfield just hasn't delivered, given the high-profile nature of what they are.
Correct. I was going to say, they've got some good names in there, so they haven't delivered. That's exactly right.
Bottom line, they haven't just fired a shot this year. I don't know who the player was. I saw it in the injury list this week. I thought, Sco will just blow up here. Some player, I don't know if it's a Geelong player, listed as general soreness missing. I mean, general soreness. You talk about being specific or being transparent. When's the last time you've seen a player miss just because of they're generally sore?
Well, it'd come out of Geelong. That's a guarantee. Chris Scott just takes, hey, if he ever heard this, which I'm sure he he knows he takes a piss. And because he can.
Yeah.
It's not really his fault. He's like, I can do what I feel like. Yeah, general soreness. Oh, he's a bit sore here, a bit sore there. I mean, come on. It's insulting to other people, but I don't think he really minds because he's been doing it forever.
So Geelong coming off that pretty humid outing against the Lions on Saturday night. Bear that in mind, they fell away after half time. I still think they win because, quite clearly, Melbourne still do not know how to kick a score. I've said this from the start of the season. They don't have any, they've got forwards out of form, and Royan's the leading key forward, and he's probably not ready to assume that mantle just yet. I just, obviously Cozzy's return, and he might play, as we saw in Mandurah, maybe mid-forward. So
he'll at least change
dynamics.
The look of what that midfield is. But, I mean, when I said Melbourne were making the finals this year, you did tell me they weren't going to kick a score, and I argued with you because I like arguing with you, but you're probably right on that one, Skate. Well done. But you weren't right on everything, which brings a glow to my heart. Interesting what they do with Max Gawn. Do they bring Reece Stanley in, or do they go with the De Koning Blitzarves sort of match up? I don't know. Look, I think Geelong win this and win it well because it's in Geelong.
Because
they're a better side.
It's a 4-goal. Whatever. I forget anything else. They're a 4-goal better side, there, aren't they?
They're going to very quickly become under a lot of pressure, Melbourne. And
they are now.
The reason, well, if they lose this and lose some more, got some hard games coming up. What happens when you do a big full rebrand, which is what they've done there? You've heard Simon Goodman on the press campaign. You've seen Max Gawn doing that. You've seen
the love
stuff, right? Which is all good, and we actually like it. And we love it. But what happens is when you spend so much time on doing this inner cultural rebrand, sometimes you don't spend the time required on the important thing, which is football, and your culture's better, right? Which is great, but your footy isn't. And 2010 was that for West Coast. I think about we spent a pre-season doing core values and what it means to be a good person, and which set me up for life, really. So it was probably more important. But if you just think about footy, we won the wooden spoon because we were spending so much time on ourselves and not the structure and strategy required to win a game of football. It probably ends up winning us a premiership in the end. So they may, in the long term, this may be a great period, but they're going to come under extreme pressure this year if they can't win games of footy.
Well, unfortunately, the likes of Max, Petrarca, Oliver, Viney, I don't think they're part of the next premiership team because that's unless something dramatically happens in the next.
Well, they should have traded both of them last year then.
Well, that's exactly, and but again, you're going to get the club burnt down by supporters in a figuratively speaking sense. That's the issue when you trade away stars and. Yeah, it's a hard call. We've seen Collingwood do it previously. We've seen Hawthorn get rid of big names. And look, I think for the betterment of the club in the next 5 to 7 years, it has been good. Short-term pain attached to that, though.
Yep. Both you picking Geelong. Okay. It's a bit boring, isn't it, picking the same teams?
No, you've got one upset to come, haven't you?
Yeah, correct. Why do you like them so much? Because they're always wrong.
I don't know. I just hope that we have enough listeners in our tipping comp to extract $10 a piece out of you.
I'm $480 down at the moment, Ski. Gold Coast v Adelaide, People First Stadium. That is the Gold Coast Stadium, if you weren't aware. Match of the round, two teams absolutely sizzling, both on the offensive side of things. I hope we see a shootout, Skate. Imagine if we copped like a 1990s, like 130 to 110 sort of operation. That'd be good to watch.
It was a bit like I was watching the game between Adelaide and Essendon, and that was like 160 to 110. It was just end to end. It was the old school of,
It's a bit crap. It's not actually that fun to watch.
No, but I'd rather see that than a 7-8 in the humidity up there. So I agree with you. I hope it's, any scoring like that is going to be fascinating, and it'll come from different sources because we know the Crows have got the three big boys, and that's the issue for with Ballard being out of the side. Can they cover? Can they have the likes of Collins, Mac Andrew? Have they got enough tools to blunt the big boys of Adelaide? So yeah, that's going to be interesting. The midfield battle's huge. Gold Coast, from what I've seen, just particularly that first game against the Eagles, are elite, and the forward line bolstered in more recent times. I think Walter back in the mix, and I didn't see a lot of the game against Melbourne, but they kicked a score.
Yeah, they were elite. Their midfield was amazing, but we have only seen 2 games out of the Gold Coast Suns.
And they played Melbourne and the Eagles.
Correct. So, real test against a midfield that's been going well. Rankin's gone to a new level this season. Jordan Dawson has always been this guy, but around players like this, Saligo is moving up into that A-grade talent sort of operation. He is becoming a very, very good midfielder. So their midfield, along with Crouch, who... Look, he hasn't been anything but this player forever either, but I just think they're more role-defined and they actually understand what they're meant to be delivering for their side. So this is a midfield battle at its best. I think it's going to be great to watch. Some stats thanks to, and numbers thanks to Aspect Accountants. Make sure you get in touch with them if you're a small business. Gold Coast have won its last 3 matches against Adelaide at People First Stadium by an average of 34 points. Different sides, though, both of them, I think. The Suns have won ground ball gets by 14 per game, ranked number 1. Ground ball gets are those either hard in and unders, but also loose ball gets on the ground. That means they're getting numbers to contests. Like that means they're getting contest to contest, and they're absolutely outworking their opponents, or at least the last 2 over the last couple of weeks. Skeeter, who are we picking?
Simply because the Suns play that ground so well. It's going to be 26 degrees, a bit of rain, but that humidity, if it's still there, it is a major advantage to the Suns. And I just think the start they've made, as good as Adelaide have been, we talked about having only beaten the Eagles and Melbourne from a Gold Coast perspective. Adelaide have knocked over Essendon, who were terrible that day, St Kilda at home, and Richmond, who are, let's be honest, none of those teams I don't think are going to challenge for the eight.
Point.
So I think the Gold Coast Suns record up there, midfield, able to produce enough inside 50s to give their forwards a chance, and they'll win.
I'll take Gold Coast too. Richmond v Brisbane in the MCG. It's a Saturday twilight game.
Could this be a record low crowd?
You
for
wouldn't think
Richmond,
it's
Brisbane?
drawing very much, would you? But Richmond always get a crowd out there, mate. Like, they love their footy.
Let's go to one of the pubs around the corner.
Yeah, they probably love their drinking as much as they love their footy. They'd probably get a couple of shelters on tap there. Look, this is not that interesting of a game at the MCG. Makes it slightly more interesting. If this was the Gabba, it's a 150-point blowout. I think Brisbane wins this well. I wonder how many games Brisbane play at the MCG this year. I know you're big on this, Skate.
I think I looked at it. Look, if there's any more than two, I'll be very surprised.
So that would be what Brisbane are looking at this as. Like, you got to be able to play on the MCG to win a grand final, which they know and they've done. Yeah, so if I'd have a little focus on this one, Dane Sorko's playing incredible footy. Do you know how old he is?
I'm going to say he's 31.
He's 36 years old.
31, I've got that close, haven't I?
He's 36 years old. He's averaging career-high disposals, 27, career-high metres gained in 700 a game, and career-high marks in 8 a game. If Richmond are any chance, they need to shut down this fossil running around in the back line. He's bloody looking good for a fossil. That's a good effort at 36, Skate.
36, yeah, look, I'm sure he'd be happy hearing me say 30, and it is a bit silly because he's been going around for a fair while. But 36, how old's Pendles? He's 37, isn't he? He's not far off Pendles.
He could be. Pendles could be older than that, I reckon.
You reckon?
I don't know. Yeah, well, Pendlebury's older than me, and I'm 37.
Wow.
I think. I don't know how old I am. So there you go, Skate. Who are we picking? I'm not going to preview that one. I don't really care.
Yeah, actually, Brisbane. So the Brisbane, by the way, just quickly play Hawthorn at the MCG in May. That's 2. And outside of that, they've got Marvel Stadium, Gabba, 3. So 3 games at the home of footy.
You picking them?
I am.
North Melbourne v Sydney, Marvel Stadium, Saturday night. I actually think this is going to be a pretty good game, Skater. Griffin Logue is back in after that hamstring issue. Logan McDonald is in for the Sydney Swans, which is a big in. Tom Papley will miss, though, which is a big out for Sydney. How do you see this one going? I just think this is an interesting game, Skeeter, given that it's at Marvel Stadium.
I think North Melbourne at some point in this match will be in a winning position. No, I do.
They'll be in front or a winning position?
In a winning position and in front. So
Okay.
in front, yes. I think they will. Sydney impressive against the Dockers, showed a fair bit of character there. But yeah, look, to be totally honest with you, I haven't had a 4-quarter look at North Melbourne this year. Saw them briefly against Adelaide. They were impressive in parts against the Bulldogs. Obviously knocked over Melbourne. That win, I guess, has to have a question mark given the way Melbourne are tracking. But look, I think it's obvious having guys like Caleb Daniel come into the side, Harry Sheasel, just the mix of these guys have got some experience. Jack Darling, who is going to play an important, but maybe not statistically a big role, but important role to help Nick Larkey out this year. I think North. There was some talk George Wardlaw might be back in the mix shortly. So on that basis, I think, and we know the big boy Cherry in the ruck.
Big boy McAvoy.
Well, big boy McAvoy.
So Cherry's looking average, to say the least, to play this week, Skeeter.
In doubt, is he?
So he hurt his hamstring and back-related operation last week. I've spoken to Drew Jones, our man on the ground there. He runs Goat Fantasy as well as his work on Fox Footy, Drew Jones. So he's a big fantasy man. Tristan Cherry is someone that a lot of people have, Skater, in fantasy. This is why I kind of like fantasy footy, because although fantasy, it's important. He's an important player for them, but there's a lot of attention on him in fantasy land. He was at training today, Drew Jones, and said he looked very average, bad signs to play this week, could barely run. So that'll be a big out for North Melbourne if that does happen.
Absolutely.
If I can just chime in here with some breaking news, depending on when you are listening to this, Skeeter, if you're an audience member, and quickly Hayden can get this one up. 10 a.m. press conference called, John Worsfold and Oscar Allen fronting the media.
When's that for?
10 a.m. today.
Wow, well, that's
We expected this.
Well, we were hoping for it, but has it been 48 hours too late or about on the money? Probably about right. I think they've read the room and said let's get this. And it's the only way to do it. It really is the only way to do it.
Wonder if he's going to stand down or not.
I would
As
hope
captain.
not. I would hope not. Not if John Worsfold's there with him.
I would say if John Worsfold's there with him, he'll be standing down. I would say that's what that says. Otherwise, he'd just be by himself talking about the decision and being open and honest.
No, look, you might have read that better than
John
I.
Worsfold next to him as GM of Footy goes, thanks for your time, Oscar, as the captain. I'm standing down.
So if he's standing down, that means essentially he's almost at the door. No? Is that too big a extrapolation?
I may need to do a breaking news podcast to drop in front of this, depending on what happens, Skate. So this is it's an interesting conversation because you and I don't know what's going to happen in an hour's time. You reckon he doesn't stand down? I reckon. No, just reading the room now, I reckon that's a stand down.
The more
presser.
you say with John Worsfold, you're possibly correct. It's an early stand down call though. Like round 3, you've met with. I mean, it's
optics aren't great. Optics are a terrible word, but optics aren't great. Skate. With this game, North Melbourne Sydney.
Wait until you find out Tristan Cherry's playing.
Can I do that or not? I pick North Melbourne to upset Sydney if Cherry plays.
Okay. Well, when do you put your tips in?
Well, I can put them in 1 minute before this game if I like.
We'll go for your life.
Okay.
So either way, I hope you're wrong.
So I'll pick Sydney if he doesn't play. What are you doing?
I'm picking Sydney, but as I said, I think I just don't have enough trust in North just yet. But Sydney at Marvel. These two teams had some interesting matchups in recent times.
Not that interesting, thanks to Aspect Accountants. If you're a small business, go and see them. Sydney is undefeated in its last 10 matches against North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium with 9 wins and 1 draw.
Yeah, but I do
dating back to 2008.
Yeah, that being said, talk about there was
undefeated
one. Wasn't
in 20
years. But wasn't there a couple of really tight matches, including one where a decision was given against North. Remember that?
Off the bench thing?
Yeah, that one. So that was, maybe I'm just plucking one out of thin air, but I think North will be competitive.
You pick Sydney.
I'll pick Sydney.
Okay. Port Adelaide, St Kilda, Adelaide Oval, Sunday. This is the only other Sunday game because we've done West Coast and Fremantle. St Kilda's 3rd game at Adelaide Oval in 5 weeks.
There's a gather round coming up as well.
Yes, correct.
Where you're going.
Zach Butters is a test. Jack Steele is a test at St Kilda. Thanks to Aspect, Port Adelaide has won 14 of its last 15 games against St Kilda since 2012, with its only loss coming by 29 points at 2020. We spoke to Drew Jones on the Footy Interchange on Tuesday on BackChat Skeeter, and he said, looking at Port Adelaide's fixture, if they don't win this, or even if they do, they could be at round 10, 2-8. They have one of the hardest fixtures coming up ahead of them. I'll get you some of those teams in just a second. But this is a must-win for St Kilda, for Port Adelaide. Even if they do or don't, it's going to be a brutal next 5 to 6 weeks for Port Adelaide. Yes, they play St Kilda, Hawthorn, Sydney away, North Melbourne, and the Bulldogs. So it's not that hard, is it?
Oh, well, there's some tough games in there. Okay. A bit like North Melbourne's poor record. I don't think North had ever won at the Adelaide Oval and still haven't. St Kilda has won just 3 of 19 at the Adelaide Oval. So they've been pretty good last couple of weeks. Knocked over Richmond as expected. The win that was really meritorious was against Geelong. We're seeing some of the younger players coming back from injury, and I like the look of their so-called big-name players. Wanganeen Miller out of defence is classy, and Ross Lyon during the week suggesting he should go and have a coffee with Port Adelaide. Be surprised if he doesn't have a coffee with Port Adelaide in a jestful sort of note. Ryan Marshall loving the ruck. They're probably going to be, probably going to find it tough against a side like Port Adelaide, who I called last week, and I was really, really thought they had concrete boots on.
Really?
And Horn Francis, well below his best. Kind of rosy. Their 2 key playmakers hardly had an impact on the game. So, I know that Horn Francis has had a lot to do with Josh Carr and trying to get himself up and running this season and whatnot. They'll be winning this game, I would have thought, Port Adelaide, but you're right. They're, for what I've seen, they're not top 8 material.
St Kilda can upset Port Adelaide, and I'll pick St Kilda as my upset if I don't pick North Melbourne. But at this stage, I'm going Port Adelaide. Well, I can hedge my bets, Skeeter. Why can't I hedge my bets?
Well, we normally make our tips on a Thursday, not on a Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, well, there you go. You're going to have to be a guessing game.
Thanks, Chris Scott. Just put a tip in and be done with it.
Scott, that's very good from you, Skate. You've been pretty good the last couple of days. A couple of good gags. Pretty good.
I've been very funny.
Yeah, your direct quote about yourself was like, I'm very good most of the time. People just don't listen to me.
That's probably more to the mark.
All right, buys to Essendon and Hawthorn. Sam Mitchell's flying around the country acquiring players in his buy. There you go. Shelter Brewing Co. Beer fresh from the Busselton for sure. Let's finish off the show, Skate, with some questions and comments and get ready for the Oscar Allen press conference.
Yes.
Derek on YouTube. So O'Fay last week, which I still don't know what that means. Yeah. Now,
French.
Carte Blanche. Stop confusing Scoey, Skeeter, says Derek. What's Carte Blanche? What's that mean?
Well, Carte Blanche is, it's...
You've thrown it out there. Tell me what it means.
I didn't say Carte Blanche.
I think you might have. That's what Derek's saying. I certainly do. I don't even know what it means. I don't even know what it says. I can't say it or read it or do anything. I don't know what it is. So you think I said it to you? Why would Derek's not an idiot?
No, I'm just saying.
You might be. So I might be a bigger one. What? What's Carte Blanche mean? You don't know, do you?
I do know. Just trying to put it in a sentence like...
With an accent.
No, I'm not doing it with an accent. You idiot. No, if Carte Blanche means... if you've got...
It is what it is? No? Carte Blanche?
Let's get the exact meaning of it, but it's to do with... If you're saying Carte Blanche, it's encompassing... What's the exact word?
Well, you tell me. You're the one saying it.
I didn't. Did I say it last week?
I'm telling you,
I've used Carte Blanche a few times. But
complete freedom to act as one wishes. Just do whatever you want.
Okay.
Right? This is pretty much...
encompasses a lot of stuff. That's what I was trying to say.
So Scoey acts Carte Blanche every week in the media. Just does whatever he feels like. Carte Blanche. Just shoots his words, Carte Blanche.
Well, you struggle with the English language, so let's not worry about the French one at the moment.
From Jog On YouTube, like Joe Biden, Skeeter's opinion should be taken with the biggest grain of salt. Bloke definitely gets his boosters every 6 months. Jog On. No. That's bullshit. Piss off. Don't respond to it. Whoever put that in, you can piss right off. Nev.
Who's his?
No. Don't worry about it. No, fuck off, Jog On. And Jog On. Nev on YouTube, trade Oscar Allen, trade Harley. That's 5 picks in the first 20 plus. They'll get number 1 and 19 if they finish last. That is then 7 picks in the first 20 players. Full rebuild. That's what I would do from Nev.
Now, Nev's not talking rubbish here, and it is, well, it's in play, depending on what happens in the next 6 months. I think the Eagles have to be mindful of getting the best they can if they've got 2 players that want out. I'm not saying they both do, but if that's the case, absolutely look at that. You've got Tasmania on the horizon. Bit like Richmond, get a stockpile. The issue with that, of course, is you're going to be pretty average for the next 2 or 3 years because you've got to get those 30, 40 games into players. But if they get that right, then that's going to be to the detriment of course, other clubs in that space trying to get stockpiled lists for Tasmania. But also, Nev's, I think it's a discussion worth having, or certainly it's a point of view that I think is very valid.
There we go. We are at the end of the Shelter FootyCast, where WA's best footy show and WA's best beer combined to bring you all the latest footy news. I think we've done pretty well today. Skeeter, welcome again to our new sponsors, Aspect Accountants. If you're a small business owner, go and check them out. Go and speak to Ben and the team, either in West Perth or Busselton. You can get in contact with them via their website, aspect.accountants.com.au, or send them an email, info@aspect.accountants.com.au. If you are doing that, you may as well do it over a beer, I reckon. Shelterbrewing.com.au. You can get 10% off right now with Shelter FootyCast at checkout. Skeet, I'm excited for this weekend. A couple of good games. You and I will be working our asses off, no doubt, and looking forward to this press conference with Oscar Allen and John Worsfold.
Yeah, it's less than an hour away. That could be one of the biggest AFL stories, in WA at least, this year.
A shitty team unless we get to talk about something. Thank you very much, Skate. Have a good weekend.